Later we see witches just chilling and patrolling around the town. Andrea asks why everyone is working outside in the dead of the winter, and she is quite curious about what Roland did to make them brave the weather. Ash reminds her it's still late autumn, but Andrea argues it's pretty much winter already. As the usual argument starts between the two ladies, Sylvie steps in to calm everyone down. She explains that civilians typically avoid working in winter due to the effort and risks involved. But in Border Town, food is cheap, firewood is abundant, and Miss Lily helps with illnesses, so they're willing to work for daily wages. Andrea gets it about the firewood but can't figure out why food is so cheap, pointing out that her family, in the food business, always saw prices spike during famines. Sylvie clarifies that in Border Town, there's only one set price for food, and the prince ensures the buying price is higher than the selling price. Ash argues that it sounds like forced pricing, wondering why others can't set higher prices. Tilly steps in, explaining that processing and storage raise the cost of grains, making higher prices unavoidable. Sylvie agrees, adding that the prince uses extra funds to pay workers and expand production, but Ash sticks to her guns, arguing that it should be a free market. Sylvie says she's not so sure about that, but she's confident he's not setting crazy prices and that no one is starving. If the prices can stay stable, it'll benefit the people. Plus, it's not like farmers can just escape unfairness in a free market. They have to turn in most of their harvest, and if their shares price is too low, that could really hurt them. A locked price feels more fair, and more production means more income for everyone. Sylvie reminds them that farmers don't have to stay farmers forever. The prince promised that once their production hits a certain level, they can be promoted to citizenship. She explains that citizens only need to give up 20% of their harvest, and with the set prices, they'll be raking in a pretty good income. Now Tilly understands why the town is buzzing with life. She is fascinated how the legislation and the reward system were designed to encourage them. Suddenly an alarm blares and citizens start to panic. It's an alert for demons, and some of them decide to head to the wall to help the soldiers. Andrea feels fired up when she hears this. After all, they came here to show how witches really fight. When we reach the wall, we see Carter raising his eyebrow at how these demons never seem to get tired. They're always running wild every year, and even if they break through the town, it won't really do them any good. On the contrary, the other new soldiers are pumped up to flex their muscles. They think it'll be great practice, way cooler to shoot at demons than at a stationary dummy. Speaking of dummies, Carter has heard some interesting rumors about their artillery squadron. Other squads have mentioned that soldiers with consistent aim are being drafted into a precision team for a new mission. The soldiers shout at the mention of a precision team, and think that they just probably made this story up when they were getting bored. But Iron Axe reveals that the prince is planning to develop a new cannon for ships, which will let them attack other ships from a distance. Only the best marksmen will be commanding these cannons, and if anyone's interested in joining, they can put in a request through him. Alex, one of the leaders of this squadron, perks up at the news. He thinks to himself that this is clearly an opportunity to advance in the military. According to Iron Axe, warships might be named after soldiers who achieve significant accomplishments, and if a ship ever gets named after him, his life will have been worth it. He's also hoping these new kids get a chance to earn some valor as well, but right now, they're just too jumpy. They need to steady themselves. Besides, it would be ridiculous for a ship to be named Grapefruit or Broom. Suddenly, he shouts at his juniors to quit yapping and focus on the battlefield. As the monsters approach, he tells them to do their job and show the other squadrons that they're the best. The newcomers start shooting quickly, but their aim is so off that not a single bullet hits the monsters. Meanwhile, upon seeing the soldiers using those weapons, Andrea points out how these so-called firearms are supposed to be powerful, but they are useless if they can't hit their target. Ash explains that these soldiers used to be miners, farmers, and hunters, and they've only been using these weapons for about half a year. The princess excitedly asks Sylvie if she's familiar with firearms, to which the girl replies that she's observed them a few times. They seem like some sort of crossbow weapon, but the projectile is tiny and doesn't have a shaft or feathers. However, it doesn't seem to rely on the flexibility of a string to fire. Instead, it uses the impact from an explosion of some black powder to launch the projectile at high speed. It's probably some sort of alchemical product, but she has no idea what it's made of. Andrea then points out that this must be really expensive since alchemy has never been cheap. But judging by how they're using it, it's clear they're not being sparing at all. As the monster gets closer, the soldiers realize that their bullets are ineffective against its giant shell. That's when Andrea starts preparing to shoot an arrow, while thinking about how these so-called firearms have limited power. She knows that as long as she can get within 10 paces, even a city wall can't stop her magic arrows. But before she can act, the soldiers start firing their heavy artillery, and those massive bullets hit the monster directly, shattering its shell. The sight of such powerful firepower leaves Ash and Andrea completely blown away. After watching the firearms in action, Tilly returns to the castle with her witches. and their faces look like they just stepped out of a hentai story. Wendy welcomes them back, and Tilly takes her seat at the table. Wendy mentions that she heard they went to help the First Army at the walls earlier. She then tells them they should try the town's special bird kiss mushroom skewers. It looks like Andrea's mind is still stuck processing the power of the firearm she just saw. When Wendy asks what's wrong and if the dish isn't to her taste, Ash quickly assures her to not worry about Andrea. Meanwhile, Andrea is replaying that moment in her mind over and over when that cannon took down the monster with a single hit. She's feeling utterly inadequate, realizing there's no way she could compete against that kind of firepower. On top of that, all the food stuffed with spices and sauces reeks of crudeness. In the Kingdom of Dawn, seasonings are often used to hide poor quality ingredients, and the more seasoning, the worse it tastes. But for some reason, she finds this dish frighteningly delicious. She can't quite figure out where in the border town they found such juicy mushrooms. She can tell that even this ordinary vegetable stew tastes like it was made with rich chicken ribs and seafood stock. And then there's this thing called ice cream cake, which is just a heavenly experience, and she can't get over it and craves bite after bite. Ash laughs and tells her to eat as much as she wants since they've got a rescue operation tomorrow. It'll be time for their wonderful Miss Andrea to truly shine. The next day, when they set off, people in the border town are amazed to see the balloon flying in the sky. Lightning waves to the soldiers as they depart for their mission, and Princess Tilly can't help but notice how popular Lightning is with the soldiers. Lightning just smiles, saying the prince always asks her to command them. Tilly, on the other hand, thinks to herself that there's no doubt Lightning is his daughter. Her ability to fly is perfect for her, and only the sky can satisfy her restless heart. Tilly knows Thunder wishes for Lightning to live a humble life, but his daughter is actually destined to be an explorer, maybe even surpassing Thunder himself. All Tilly wants is to protect her. One of the Slumber Island witches, Shavi, points out that this is the first time she's seen the western region blanketed in snow. Wendy asks if she's from around here, and Shavi responds positively, saying she used to live at Dragon Cliffs in the south, where it doesn't snow much. When she heard that Miss Tilly was recruiting witches at Slumber Island, she snuck onto a ship to Clearwater to join the others. Wendy then laments how the prince is always complaining that Border Town never gets witches, even though they openly advertise it as a haven, but it looks like Tilly beat him to it already. Shavi finds it amazing that they've been gathering witches as well. Ash confirms that Prince is indeed recruiting witches and remembers how one of his agents, Theo, approached her, and he quickly reconfigured her as one of the witches. She snickers as she recalls how he wasn't anything special, but he sure was a generous guy, and she definitely ate well during her trip to Bordertown because of him. Then Andrea throws a jab at Ash, saying that if it wasn't for Miss Tilly recruiting her, Ash would have already headed to Bordertown ages ago. Our tough girl gets mad at this, but Tilly quickly steps in to diffuse the tension, reminding them that it doesn't matter if it's Slumber Island or Border Town. Every witch is their ally, so they better stop fighting. The two brute ladies reluctantly drop their argument, while Anna and Nightingale can't help but smile, satisfied to see Tilly's mature way of thinking. Now, speaking of Anna, Tilly can't help but reflect on her. As she looks back at her, she realizes it wouldn't be a stretch to say that her brother, Prince Roland, was heavily influenced by her. Just by observing Anna, Tilly can tell that her aura is calm and reserved, like a vast meadow, and she seems incredibly kind and reliable. She has also heard from Sylvie that Anna was one of the first witches to evolve her abilities in Bordertown, and that her magic is shockingly powerful. She even finished reading Natural Science 101 before anyone else. Tilly is sure that if she ever gets to discuss natural sciences with Anna by a cozy fire someday, it would be amazing. Suddenly, Maggie begins flapping around frantically. When Lightning asks what's going on, the little pigeon points out that the ruins are gone. This shocks Nightingale and the others, while Lightning claims it used to be right there. Princess Tilly is blown away to see such a huge hole and quickly tells Sylvie to check what's inside. As soon as Sylvie uses her abilities, she spots some sort of massive worm-like monster moving northwest. But then she gets shocked and exclaims that the ruins are in the worm's stomach. Sylvie further claims that she indeed saw the tower and the crystal coffin that was mentioned inside the monster's stomach. Tilly asks if there's anything else besides the worm, like devils. Sylvie responds that there were some, but they seem to be dead in its stomach. Princess Tilly then orders everyone to land immediately. She tells them to split into two teams. One will guard outside, while the other will go with her down into the hole. She makes it clear that they're going to kill the giant worm monster and retrieve the crystal. Once they land, Andrea and Nightingale remain on the ground, while Tilly, Ash, and all the other witches, including Anna, begin their descent down the hole. As Tilly reflects on the situation, she reveals to us that entering the hole will require witches capable of flight, which means dragging that crystal out is out of the question. If they can't wake the person stuck inside either, they'll have to cut the crystal open, and they'll definitely need Shavi's shield for that. On the other hand, Sylvie's magic eye is essential as well. Without her, they would struggle to locate the ruins in the worm's stomach. Anna's healing and slicing abilities are just as crucial. Thankfully, since Sylvie and Anna are both quite light, Maggie is able to carry them. Lastly, Tilly herself can also carry Ash, who can handle any combat situation. Every witch here is important, so losing even one of them would make this mission very difficult. The two left behind, Nightingale and Andrea, will guard the entrance in case of any demon attacks from the Misty Forest. With those two standing watch, their backs are covered. We also learn that Tilly has a solid backup plan in case they need to escape and ditch the rescue effort, though she still feels uneasy about it. She hasn't figured out why the worm only targeted these ruins while leaving everything else unscathed. It's also surprising that it's tunneling northwest, which is where the Devil Nest is located. Once they finally reach the end of the hole, they find another massive tunnel going west, left by the worm. Tilly tells everyone to light their torches, and everyone follows her instructions promptly. Sylvie then adds that she can sense the monster ahead, so they start walking forward into the saliva-filled tunnel. After walking for a while inside the tunnel, they finally reach the worm. The rotten smell coming from this disgusting monster burns every witch's nostril hairs. Ash decides to slice open the monster's stomach and be done with it before the smell starts messing with her head. But as soon as she grabs her sword to draw it, Tilly tells her to wait, explaining that they'll need Anna to kill it. She points out that since they don't know what's inside the stomach, slicing it open could be dangerous, so using swords is out of the question. Anna quickly raises her hand and shoots a green fire bullet that pierces the worm's thick skin and makes its way inside. That green fire bullet starts spinning around, crisscrossing in every direction. In no time, the monster is sliced like a perfect cucumber from every side, and blood begins to gush out. Once they see how easily Anna cut through the monster, their faces go blank, and they stare in awe at the true power and magnificence of her abilities. Sylvie quickly explains that the monster is dead since its heart has stopped beating. Ash is surprised that this monster even has a heart, to which Sylvie replies that it's near its head and about the size of their balloon's basket. It also got sliced up by Anna's flames, and magic is rippling throughout it. Seeing the magic, Lightning wonders if it's a hybrid demon. However, Tilly says they can't be sure, as historical records of the wastelands and demons are scarce. There's still so much they don't know, so she suggests grabbing the crystal and get going. As they enter the belly, Ash complains about the sticky mess, while Sylvie reports that all the rocks in here are crushed, making it impossible to tell what the tower used to look like. Lightning then mentions that there were so many glittering magic stones. She shows one of them, which resembles the crystal they're looking for. Right on cue, Ash finds the crystal after cutting through the flesh. With a few more slices, the giant crystal is finally revealed, and they see the witch trapped inside. Princess Tilly is left speechless as her eyes land on the magnificence of the stone. She quickly tells Anna that it's now her turn to work her magic. Anna quickly uses her fire laser once again, and the princess asks how it's going. Anna replies that it's a little hard, but she can cut it open. The crystal promptly begins to shatter, and the cracks expand around it until, eventually, the crystal blows up. Tilly is shocked to discover that there are two layers, with the inner part being the real crystal. Lightning tries to touch it and confirms that it's freezing to the touch. Anna then gives it her all, and finally manages to melt down the second layer as well, and out pops the witch who was stuck inside. Ash quickly takes her into her arms while Tilly asks if she's still alive. The brute lady confirms that she is, but it's very faint, and her heartbeat is still going, which is just barely alive. Even Tilly's mind can't help but wonder how she could survive in a frozen crystal like that. She's definitely a witch, but her name, origin, and why she was stuck in the ruins remain a mystery. She is eager to ask her all these daunting questions once they return. Meanwhile, outside the tunnel, the two blonde baddies stand on guard duty. Looks like Andrea is feeling bored and is already missing Tilly. She considers talking to Nightingale, but as an elite from the Kingdom of Dawn, she feels that elegance is a necessary quality for an unmarried woman, so she hesitates to approach her, especially since Nightingale is somewhat of a rival. She has heard that she matches Ash in terms of power and combat, but still, she finally decides that talking to a fellow witch is just a natural thing to do. However, before she can say anything, Nightingale suddenly vanishes from the scene, leaving Andrea startled. Right at that moment, she senses a heavy presence and turns around, but finds nothing. She wonders if it was Nightingale, but then she feels that there is more to that. She eventually summons her weapon, thinking there's an enemy nearby, and the enemy appears to be translucent. Just as she's about to make a move, a gunshot blares right by her left ear, and blood splatters in front of her. The creature that took the shot remains invisible. Once the monster is dead, it's finally visible now, which leaves Andrea shocked to see a praying mantis before her eyes. It was Nightingale who took it out, otherwise, she is pretty sure she would have been toast. Nightingale goes on to blast two more mantises, blowing their heads off. Wendy also comes rushing into the scene and asks what in the world are these things. Nightingale mentions that the creatures look like devils, if not demons, but their blood seems even more demonic. Andrea asks her since when she first noticed them creeping around. Nightingale replies that she spotted them the moment they first appeared. She explains that in her mist, their magic shines as brightly as a star, so it was easy for her to see them. Right at that moment, Sister Lightning flashes out of the tunnel, and Wendy lights up, relieved to see that they've made it back safely. Afterwards, they ride their balloon, and everyone gathers around this rescued witch in the balloon basket. Wendy can't believe that this witch was all alone in a place like that for decades. This just fuels her curiosity, and she wants to know what really happened to her. Princess Tilly then explains that she had a bad feeling inside, which is why she wanted to leave in a hurry. She asks if anything happened outside while they were inside. Nightingale explains that there were some weird hybrid demons, but they were dispatched immediately. Suddenly, Sylvie notices something below and exclaims in shock and asks, "What are those things crawling on the ground?" Andrea peers down and wonders if they're demons. But Tilly says she can't see anything except for a bunch of praying mantis corpses. Sylvie urges them to look closely, and they realize the corpses are completely torn apart, like something is eating them. Nightingale then glances down as well, and sees tons of creatures moving in their translucent forms. They are apparently demon monsters, and they are around 100, all rushing toward the hole. She suspects they might be after the dead worm's flesh, but shrugs it off, thinking it's not their problem anymore. However, it looks like Tilly isn't so sure about that. The scene cuts to the military grounds, where we see the new force, known as the police force. Night Carter explains to every soldier that the police unit will be a part of the public security system. They will be peacekeepers within Prince Roland's territory, responsible for catching criminals, detecting unlawful activity, and maintaining order. They will also make sure to enforce the laws set by the Prince and City Hall, as well as help citizens in need. After a week of training, he imagines everyone will have a solid understanding of their duties. With that settled, he decides to lead them to their first mission, and tells everyone to follow him. The group starts trailing Carter promptly, and among the soldiers, we spot a familiar face. Someone who can hardly believe he passed Prince Roland's test and became a police officer after just a week of training. If you don't remember this guy, he's the one who was a refugee and exposed a City Hall official for selling free food in black to other refugees. Let's call him Redhead until we find out his name. The written assessment for this test had been the toughest task for him. He was given a scenario where he had to react cleverly to get out of a bad situation, but he nailed it. Now he's glad to finally have a stable income, and while he'll be assigned to the inner district, at least he can send some money to his old friend Kriegsman as well. Once they arrive at the docks, they see a ship that just came in, packed with refugees from the south and north. Night Carter informs them that the prince has invited these people to Border Town to ensure their safety during this harsh winter. So the first task of the police unit is to organize the refugees into lines so they can pass through each station for virus testing and registration. Since the police unit is still a bit short-staffed, the First Army will also be there to support them. In the future, the police will handle this independently. We then see Prince Roland arriving at the docks with Theo and Hunter Iron Axe. The refugees are in awe as the prince personally comes to see them. After all, not many elites would bother to leave their heated homes and comfy beds during winter. Among the crowd, we spot a shady-looking refugee standing in the registration line, eyeing the prince with suspicious eyes. When his turn finally comes, he lies and says his name is Fursona, claiming to be an illiterate farmer from the north. The attendant at the table gives him the green light to move forward, but that's when Redhead steps in and starts grilling this so-called farmer about what month wheat should be planted during the winter. The attendant tells his fellow to let the man go, reminding him that their job is just to sort people out, and they don't have enough time for thorough investigations. But Redhead isn't letting this man off the hook easily, and continues to expose him, pointing out that even though this man claims to be a northerner, his accent sounds more like it's from the central region. So he asks this alleged farmer which town he belongs to in the north. Since Redhead is quite familiar with the northern region, he also notes that the guy's dress code doesn't fit either, because northern folks would at least wear gloves since the temperatures up there often dip below freezing. Right at that moment, the shady guy pulls a red church pill from his pouch. As soon as he pops it in his mouth, his shirt tatters as his muscles bulge out. Redhead is caught off guard, and this madman swings Redhead around like a trash bag before throwing him to the ground hard enough to make him cough up blood. The pill-infused maniac then launches himself toward the prince while poor Redhead struggles to stand. We then see that there are two other assassins also charging at the prince simultaneously. But before they can even touch him, a bullet tears through the head of the pill-infused man, and thanks to Prince's trusted allies, the three assassins are down for the count. Panic erupts among the refugees as they scatter in all directions. But Prince stands there resolutely, shouting for everyone to calm down. He declares himself the leader of the West, assuring them there's no reason to panic.